The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Welcome to First Presbyterian Church as we gather together as God's people in God's name this morning. It is good to be here. I welcome all of you here today. A couple of brief announcements. If you would please take a moment, sign those blue friendship registers and pass them down the aisle. We would appreciate that. Quick reminder that the theologian in residence, the annual lecture series happening at Tusculum University, that begins this Wednesday. There are brochures in the back. It is free. It is a fantastic series of lectures. This year's speaker will be Dr. Bembry from Emmanuel Christian Seminary right down the road. Please consider signing up for those on Wednesday mornings if you have free time. It is well worth your trip to Greenville. Brochures in the back. Let's see. Just quickly, some things to note on your calendar. Next Sunday, Carol, do you want to? Okay, I'll let you say that then. Peacemaking team will have a planning luncheon on February 23rd at the Barricker House. We will have Evolution Sunday 2 weeks from today, and lots of exciting plans about that. You can read more about that in the e-news that went out Thursday or next week. Joining Sunday will be, our next Joining Sunday will be on March the 1st. Kathy Wing is one to talk to if you'd like more information on that. I announced a couple of weeks ago that J.C. Mills, a friend of this congregation, had died maybe about a month ago or so. For anyone who would like or is interested, he will have a celebration of life this Saturday at 4 p.m. at the New Zion Faith Center in Johnson City. That's kind of between the medical center in Jonesboro, down off Market Street. It's just a time to celebrate his life, so for anyone that would like to be a part of that, everyone is invited. Today is the first Sunday of the month, so it means that our Everyone Counts goes to Food for the Multitude. Simply by showing up this morning, we will give $1 for every person in worship here today to Food for the Multitude, feeding ministry to provide hot meals to people in Carter County. You don't have to do anything other than show up to church for us to give $1 for everybody here. We invite you to put your $1 in the offering plate as it goes around this morning, but please know that whether you do anything or not, that just being present in worship today makes a real and tangible difference in the lives of people in this community. And so for that, I thank you. I think that's everything other than, what's that? Yeah, I know Julie Wade and Carol both have announcements. If y'all want to, well, if anybody else needs to make announcements, if you would please use the mic so that YouTube and our live streaming will pick it up this morning. Building and Grounds team, while they're making their way up, Building and Grounds will also have a meeting in 2 weeks from today to review projects for the spring. Talk to Mike if you have any ideas or want to be a part of that.
Good morning. The Peacemaking Committee is planning a ranked choice voting event after church next Sunday. It didn't get in the bulletin, and if you're not familiar with ranked choice voting, it simply enables your first, second, third, fourth, and on votes to count. And I have a display out back along with some tags with URLs for it. And I hope that you'll be able to join us. Instead of voting on people, which can be harder, we're going to vote on cookies. And I figured that's always a good choice, so we'll have cookies and coffee. The other thing today is World Palindrome Day, 02/02/2020, and palindromes are words that are spelled, read the same backward and forward, so I chose one. It's also out there if you want to share it. It is, are we not drawn onward, we few, drawn onward to a new era? Let's do it.
Good morning. Now that I have your attention, I want you to look at the person sitting to your left. Do you know their first name? Do you know their last name? Now, if it's a spouse, we'll give you that. Look at the person in front of you. Do you know their name? Do you know the occupation of the person sitting next to you? Do they have children? Do they have grandchildren? Do they have pets? In other words, we see each other here every Sunday. We see the faces, we smile and say, hey, how are you? But we have a way for you to get to know people in the church even better, and it's called Dinners for 8. On the front page of your bulletin is a sign-up sheet. And the way this works is there will be a host who can host anywhere from 6 to however many you can seat in your home. The host provides the main course and the drinks, and then the host will contact you to bring a particular dish to complement whatever the main course is. So if you want to really get to know the folks in this church, please sign up. These are a lot of fun. You can sign up for either month or for both months. What we really, really need are hosts. So if you do have room in your home and you could have us in, please sign up to host. Thank you very much. Put those in the offering plate or give them to me after church.
Any other joys or concerns? Friends, today is a day that God has made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it as we worship together.
Please stand as you are able and join in reading responsibly our invitation to worship by Wendell Berry. Like the water of a deep stream, love is always too much. We did not make it.
Though we drink until we burst, we cannot have it all, or want it all. In its abundance, it survives our thirst.
In the evening, we come down to the shore to drink our fill and sleep while it flows through the regions of the dark.
It does not hold us, except that we return to its rich waters thirsty. We enter, willing to die, into the commonwealth of its shores.
Please remain standing for our hymn number 633, Praise Ye the Lord.
And let me tell you how we're going to do this, if I may. 633, you start out with refrain, you sing it twice, that's the top line. Then the second verse, we don't sing refrain. The third verse, we don't sing refrain. The fourth verse, we sing refrain twice at the end after the fourth verse. See how we do it.
Please take a moment and share the peace of Christ with one another.
Peace. Peace, Jim.
Peace, Megan.
Peace. Peace on you all. Peace on you all. Peace on you all.
Well,
I won't well.
and
I was watching.
That's what happens when Paul has us sing. We both been sing racist.
Butchered it. And I watched. I was just. It's okay. We do. But you know, we got used to do that.
No, that's after.
We start hearing that last syllable, the 2 minutes sometimes, I mean 2 minutes sometimes, it's because of punching. But it's okay. How about here? Here you go. Good morning, sir. Peace to you.
Good morning.
Elliot.
Good morning, Karen. How are you? Good, thank you. Elliot.
Take those back.
Good morning, girl. How are you?
Take those back to Mama. Yeah, wait, give one to me. We gotta step it up, guys. Right, take the rest of those back to Mama.
One of the core teachings of Christianity, one of the things for which Christianity is known by Christians and folks who aren't Christians alike, which is the simple message that God is love and you are loved. The message of Christianity sometimes gets turned around to say you can't earn God's love. You know, all that works and grace stuff that Brian could tell us a lot about. You can't earn God's love. But the real teaching is you don't have to earn God's love. You are loved. What in the world would that have to do with meditation? Just this. It's actually okay to take a break for about 3 minutes and stop trying to fix yourself. Stop trying to be a better person. Stop trying to live up to other people's, or even more so, your own expectations. And just take a breath and relax and be. Because you are loved just as you are. Then arise from your meditation and wiser, calmer than before. Yes, work like heck to be a better person and to make a better world. So with that as our invitation, let's turn to meditation now and settle into a time of conscious rest, of simply being. I invite you to close your eyes and assume a posture of meditation, because a long time ago, people who paid attention to their experience realized that what you do with the body, you do with the mind. And it's easier to start with the body because the mind is, well, so slippery. So let's sit up straight. You might experiment with sitting forward in the pew a little bit as compared to reclining. But if reclining is more comfortable for your body, then please do. Let your body become calm and quiet. This is a time of conscious rest. Feel its weight in the pew and know that it's the result of the mutual attraction of Mother Earth's massive gravitational field and your body's very real but tiny gravitational field. That physical sensation of weight represents a hug between you and Mother Earth. Relax your shoulders, let them drop toward the floor, and draw them back slightly as though bringing your shoulder blades together. And you'll find that you're sitting with a nice open chest in a posture of quiet confidence, the very embodiment of faith. And now give yourself permission to let go of all thoughts of the past, all thoughts of what will be or might be, to let go for a while of all striving and struggling, however noble or ignoble. Just let go for a few minutes and simply be. Of course, thoughts will arise. That's the nature of the mind. They're insubstantial. Let them come and go like bubbles in a stream. And dwell now in the peace and the silence of this sacred moment. And now, in the calm and quiet of this moment, would you please call to mind a person or a group or perhaps our whole world who you know this morning stands in special need of the healing peace of God, the peace that passes all understanding. And in your own way, call upon God, call upon life itself to bless them just as they need to be blessed. Amen.
Our reading today is from 1 Kings chapter 17, 8 through 16. The word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, "Go now to Zarephath in Sidon and settle there, for I have commanded a widow there to feed you." So Elijah set out and went to Zarephath. When he came to the gate of the town, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and said, "Bring me a little water in a vessel, so that I may drink." As she was going to bring it, he called to her and said, "Bring me a morsel of bread in your hand." But she said, "As the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of meal in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am now gathering a couple of sticks so that I may go home and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat and die." Elijah said to her, "Do not be afraid. Go and do as you have said. But first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me, and afterwards make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of meal will not be emptied, the jug of oil will not fail until the day that the Lord sends rain on the earth." So she went and did as Elijah said, so that she, as well as he and her household, ate for many days. The jar of meal was not emptied, neither did the jug of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah.
Thank you, Kathy, for reading this morning and Paul and Fire for the anthem this morning. I like that one. It's a fun one. And just a quick word as well to share. Thank you to everybody who sent texts or emails. I had ankle surgery on Friday, and it was not, as the popular story goes, it was not due to saving a bunch of children and puppies from Nazis, as you all have probably heard. It was to correct an injury from last summer, and I'm glad to be here this morning. I'm doing well. The spread between people who have chastised me for showing up and those who said I'm glad to see you is about 50-50. So, and Sarah's money is on I should have stayed home this morning. So, you know who to side with. Our story from 1 Kings this morning picks up on the ministry of one of the Hebrew Bible's greatest prophets, this man named Elijah. And if you read much about Elijah, he's going to start to sound an awful lot like John the Baptist. But right before we get to the part that Kathy read this morning, Elijah has been out proclaiming a drought throughout all of Israel. So there shall be neither dew nor rain except by my word. And the kind of the background on that, the context on that is that that's part of an ongoing challenge between Elijah as a prophet, a representative of Yahweh, and Baal, the god of rain, who was popularly worshipped there as well. And so the king and the queen are not convinced that Elijah can make things better. In fact, they blame him for the drought. And so at this point, they've chased Elijah. They've exiled him. He's been forced to flee for his life out into the desert. And he's ended up out east of the Jordan, where he drinks from this temporary little trickle of stream and is fed by ravens. And then the stream dries up, and Elijah has to move on, and that's where the story this morning picks up. Now, just for fun, imagine for a minute, by the time we get to this story, think about what Elijah must have looked like by the time this story picks up. He's been out in the wilderness for months. He's been fed by ravens. And now at this point, God sends Elijah to a place called Sidon. And God had picked there, of all people, a widow that was supposed to feed Elijah. So it's an interesting encounter if you think about it. Elijah shows up, this wild man from the wilderness, scaring the children. And he meets a widow gathering sticks. He asks for bread and water, and she answers, "As the Lord your God lives," and odd that she should reference the God of Israel, not being an Israelite herself there in Sidon. She says, "As the Lord your God lives, I have only a little bit of flour and oil left. So I'm going to make some bread for myself and my son, and we're going to go eat it and die." And this is who is supposed to feed Elijah. Elijah's response is a little interesting. Do what you plan to do, he says, but first, make some bread for me. And then God promises you your little bit of flour and your little bit of oil won't fail until after this drought ends. And for some unknown reason, the woman believes him and does it. Now, as a brief aside, I have to admit that my first impression of Elijah does not put him in a very positive light. Here is this man in a very patriarchal culture telling this widow to feed him before she feeds herself and her son. It feels very selfish and not more than just a little misogynistic. And I don't mean to dismiss that this morning. It's an important layer of this story. But this morning, I want to invite us to set that aside for a minute and focus on this as an archetypal story throughout Scripture of abundance. And in that sense, this is a classical biblical story that is repeated over and over and over and over again. It's the manna in the desert, it's the loaves and the fishes, it's the feeding of the 5,000. It is a story that begins by looking like scarcity. And then when people share, it becomes abundance. It becomes plenty. Have you ever had this experience where you've traveled somewhere to a country where people in general live a little less well than we do, I'll say. And you were there and you're with folks who you know have less than you do, and yet you are still treated like royalty. Have you ever had food set before you that you know is far richer and better than that family can afford? When I was in seminary, I got to do an internship in Kingston, Jamaica, and that is not the part of Jamaica that anyone vacations to. It is one of the most impoverished areas in the world. And yet over and over and over and over again, anytime I would get invited to somebody's house for a meal, they would pull out all the stops and offer their best. And they would smile and be proud to give the best they have. And I don't know if you've had a similar experience. I've had that more times than I can recount, and it is humbling. But it strikes me that is really not our tendency. When we only have a little bit, our tendency is to want to hoard it, to hold on to it. We don't have enough to share, and so we hold tightly to what we have. We ration it, we try to make it stretch. And here's a story where Elijah says, share first, and then eat. And it's so counterintuitive. And yet, I think it actually works. Give me the odd look, it's okay, but I'm going to explain. Yes. Because my rudimentary economic theory says that hoarding actually creates scarcity. It takes things out of circulation. Sharing creates abundance by pooling our resources and using them more efficiently. And here's Elijah saying, give first and then eat. When we do that, it creates a special kind of community, a particular kind of abundance. And I've seen this dynamic, not just on an individual level, but with churches in decline. When a church is in decline, they or we tend to hold on really tightly to what we have left. It's this attitude of scarcity. Money is tight, energy is limited, we cut costs, we reduce staff, we put more resources into our own church and put less toward others. And the thinking is that we only have this much left, just enough for a few more services, and then we'll close up shop. And it's very counterintuitive to spend the last few dollars we have on somebody else. Make something for me first, says Elijah, and then eat. First, share. It's counterintuitive, but there is something about meeting scarcity with hospitality that engenders faith. Let me say that one more time. One of the major themes throughout the Bible, from the Hebrew Testament to the Gospels to the New Testament writings, it is a theme that shows up over and over and over again. One of the major themes is that scarcity is a myth. It's a powerful myth. And in our culture, it's a myth that serves the beast of capitalism extraordinarily well. But the God of the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament invites us to put our faith instead in stories of abundance. And to recognize that when we share first, we create abundance. And that there will be enough. But we cannot do that if we are always scared. If we are always living into the belief that we must hoard what we have in order to survive. I have been in ordained ministry now for 20 years, plus maybe 5 more in seminary and internships. And in 25 years of serving professionally in the church, I have never seen a church turn inward and hold tightly to the minimal resources it had left and yet somehow grow and thrive. If our hands are grasping tightly to what we have, then our hands cannot be open to receiving blessings. But I have seen churches do just the opposite. Decide that whatever the outcome, they would spend the time and the resources they had scattering blessings everywhere. No matter the outcome, I think Jesus even told a similar story about a sower who just scattered seeds everywhere rather than hoarding them. And I'm not going to tell you that one is a formula for success and the other inevitably leads to death. But let me just pose this question to you. Which kind of church would you rather be a part of? I've reflected on this a lot in the last couple of weeks and have been reminded again of how pervasive and how powerful this myth of scarcity is. I sat here last week. On the one hand, we got to share last Sunday an annual report, and for anybody who was here last Sunday, there was a lot of good news in it, right? We finished last year with a surplus of income about 5% over our expenses last year. We added a whole great group of new members and get to see new faces on a lot of Sundays. And it's exciting, and it feels like abundance. And then I got the email from Elaine with our weekly offering. And our giving in January was down $5,000 from last January, about 35% less than we took in a year ago. Our bills in January here exceeded our income by 50%, and immediately I started to feel that fear and that doubt of scarcity. I started to question what the future of our church looks like. What do we need to do or adjust or cut back on to make it through the year? Is there a drought coming our way? Do we need to shift into hoarding mode and protect our resources so we can survive? And it just reminded me again of what an extraordinarily powerful motivator fear is. Because scarcity plays into our deepest, basest fears that there will not be enough. That if we don't grasp tightly to what we have, we will be left behind. And fear functions just as powerfully at an institutional level as it does at an individual level. And I was sitting there thinking of how easily a couple of weeks managed to undo a year's worth of positive abundance and good news in me and create this fear and doubt of scarcity all over again. Made me understand how prevalent and how pervasive that kind of fear is. Why on earth did that widow, preparing for her final meal, decide to share with Elijah? I don't know. Maybe she figured she was dying anyway, and so what did it matter? I don't know, but I wonder what I would do in that situation. I don't know. But here's what I do know. For whatever her reason, she trusted that the promise of Elijah's God was solid. And she shared, and she had enough. Once upon a time, there were a whole bunch of Israelites wandering through a desert. And they found themselves starving and discovered they could eat these strange flakes that showed up on the ground called manna. The thing is, the manna could only be gathered enough for one day. If you hoarded it, it would rot. But if you took only what you needed and you shared, it turned out everybody had enough. And no one went hungry. Once upon a time, there were hungry people, and they were sitting down on a hillside at sunset, listening to somebody teach and talk all day. And many had brought with them nothing to eat, and a few had scarcely enough to feed themselves. And here this person they had been listening to decided to talk about sharing. And all four gospel writers tell a story that people began to share from what they had. And by the time all was said and done, everyone gathered there on that hillside had enough to eat, and there were even leftovers. Once upon a time, a poor widow gathered some sticks to make a fire to prepare her last meal. She has nothing, and then some man from the wilderness walks up to her and says, "Do what you plan to do, but share with me first." And for some inexplicable reason she does, and something miraculous, something amazing begins. Share first. Could the solution to so many of our problems really be that simple? That all we need to do is learn that lesson our kindergarten teachers tried to teach us: how to share. When we focus on survival, we die. When we share, we find life. Jesus even told people over and over again that finding abundant life meant letting go of whatever it was we were grasping onto. He said, when we share, we find life. The source of that divine life is not some mystical spiritual secret either. It is simply community. Life is found in community. And when we share, we create community. And that really is the ultimate choice we face every day. Finishes the bonds that bind us and bring us together. It erodes the trust and the interdependency that unite us. The opposite of scarcity is not just abundance. The opposite of scarcity is community. It is life. From somewhere I seem to hear a divine laughter and a voice, maybe a voice of a long-gone kindergarten teacher simply saying, you see how it works? Amen. Our hymn of response this morning, appropriately enough, and I've gotten brief from the choir for an unknown hymn, but bear with me. The words, I hope, reinforce this message that faith begins by letting go. It's number 684 in our hymnal. Let's stand and sing together.
Away.
wasn't our worst attempt at a new hymn. Please be seated. Let me invite us to continue practicing what we talked about and sharing, in the belief that when we share, we create and strengthen our bonds with one another and this family. Let us share our tithes and offerings. Simply that you would help us to open our hands, to release what we grasp tightly to, so that our hands may be open to take one another's hand, receive your blessings, to create the bonds that form community. Bless us and bless these gifts that we offer. They may help create your kingdom here in this world a little bit more each and every day. In your name we pray. Amen. Our sending hymn this morning is a familiar one. It's a fun one, so it's You Shall Go Out With Joy. Invite us to stand and sing and dance and be joyful in this community that we share as we sing together. Hymn number 80.
Trees of the field.
friends in Christ, as you go out this day, go out into the world simply with open hands to receive the blessings that await, not grasping onto what we have, but always open to receiving something new from those around us, from one another, gifts from God. As you go out this day, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind blow always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of her hand.
Good job, guys. Good job. Thank you. You're doing well. You came in when you needed to. Barbara, you handled well that alpha section. Thank you. That's good. Plenty well. Good. Good job. Did well on the old
What's that?
did well on the old
Oh, thank you.
Hour. I like that.
Always fun.
You okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't feel bad. It's just,
Well, you've got some work done, and it will, it's going to be a trip. So be careful. Let us know. If you need anything, let us know.
I will.
Okay.